from Rudy Visuals and welcome back to our channel. In today's review, we are reviewing this awesome plugin for filmmakers. Dehancer is a film emulation software that can help you transform the look of your videos by accurately emulating film and some of the aesthetic quirks that come alongside shooting on film. This is an easy way to make your footage look a little bit more unique as it allows you to replicate well-known film stocks that give you that timeless, classic feel of videos shot on film. Now, full disclosure, this is not a sponsored or paid review. Dehancer haven't told us to say anything specific, but they were kind enough to give us a copy of Dehancer Pro. But as always, all thoughts and opinions are fully independent. But if you do feel like checking it out yourself, I would highly recommend downloading the free trial. And if you decide on purchasing it, you can use our code RudyVisuals for a 10% discount. I would also highly recommend checking out the portfolio on Dehancer's website to see lots of fantastic examples of it being used in a wide range of professional work. Now, this is fully compatible as a plugin for DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut Pro, After Effects, and also Premiere Pro for video. And there is also a separate plugin for stills and an online browser version as well. Now, in terms of the pricing, it's available in different bundles depending on if you know that there's like a specific tool set that you want. Now, I like that they've also given you options for length depending on if it's something you envisage yourself using, only for like a specific project. Now, if you only want the Filmgrain tool, for example, or just the light bundle, there's a good range of options here to make it more affordable. But I do think that the Pro option, which is like the full fat version with all the bells and whistles, for the lifetime price of $450 US, while it is an amazing tool set, we'll discuss a little bit later on in this video if it's really worth that relatively steep investment. So let's break down some of the key features of Dehancer Pro. I won't go into sort of every single feature and slider as this video would just be way too long, but we'll cover some of the main selling points and tools. Now, the big selling point here is obviously the access to over 60 different film profiles emulating a range of photo film stocks as well as motion picture film stocks. Now, my personal favorite is Kodak Gold 200. It was a film that my parents used on their old point and shoot Canon. It just kind of reminds me of my childhood, and I still shoot with it today on my Canon 81. And I have to say, from what I can see, Dehancer does a fantastic job of accurately emulating the film. If I saw stills of any of these shots here, for example, I would literally think this was just a photo shot on Kodak Gold 200. I also love the fact that it gives you a bunch of options to dial in the look as well, like for example push and pull, which basically lets you kind of under or overexpose the film, as film stocks can take on slightly different characteristics based on how under or overexposed they are. So basically you're kind of getting 3 additional profiles for each film stock as well. I particularly love the print stock node, which is basically what the film is printed on and the kind of like final development step in developing film. I love the look of Kodak 2383. This is kind of like your typical Hollywood look. And I think Dehancer's version does a really good job of emulating that look, but in a very subtle way, as opposed to like those overly done kind of like, orange and teal LUTs that you find online that don't always look that great. Next, let's take a look at the film grain effect. Now, I'm guessing as fellow filmmakers, we all love to add a little bit of film grain to our footage, but I do find that the built-in grain effects in Resolve and some other cheaper plugins I've used in the past, they can sometimes look a little bit unnatural. I find that with Dehancer's film grain effect, it's like it adds the granules into the footage itself rather than just like a flat layer above the footage. I believe it's generating the grain frame by frame, so it's always a little bit different when you sort of play it back each time. So it looks a little bit more natural and organic. You can also customize the grain profile and tinker with the amount. I liked mine to be a little bit more subtle rather than overpowering the image, but I love, the texture and the tone that film grain adds and how it can make footage look less clinical and sterile and a little bit more organic. Next, let's take a look at the Halation tab. Now, this one is a pretty simple one. It just creates like these red orangey halos around light sources and can also help make skin tones a little bit more vivid. I find that this is a really interesting setting to add to footage that has like light sources that you really want to pronounce, and it creates this really kind of intense, punchy look. I think for creative projects like music videos, for example, I think this would be really cool for those sorts of things. Blue Bloom is another pretty simple tool, but can be used to really great effect. It basically creates like a very pleasing soft glow or like a mist around objects, but unlike Halation, it isn't colorized. I find that that sort of hazy look is not something that I want all the time, but definitely in certain situations it can be very powerful. Now, if needed, I usually prefer to use like a lens filter. That's probably a better way to achieve this, but as a nice to have, it's great, and it can add that kind of like sort of 80s or even like a fantasy feel to your footage. Now, film damage is another interesting tool that adds things like sort of dust, hair, and scratches. This emulates videos from like the early days of cinema, and to be honest, this isn't something that I would really use all that often. I found that this can be a little bit too overpowering, but I could see this being useful in like documentary style videos when you have like B-roll that you want to look like, you want the footage to look like it's from like an old era from another time period. Now, film breath is when you get those random jumps in exposure, contrast, or color. Like you'll see here, the colors kind of shifting randomly. In film, this is caused by uneven emulsion coating or development. And again, this just kind of gives that kind of retro analog feeling to a video. This is actually something I would not use personally, because it kind of reminds me of when you shoot with like auto white balance and you can kind of see the colors shifting in that kind of really off-putting way. But you can definitely dial it back here and make it look a bit more subtle, so it's really a nice to have. I could see it being useful in certain situations. Now, gate weave is an interesting one. This is when you see like little jumps and movements in videos, and in film this is caused by that kind of mechanical swinging of film strip while it's being pulled through a frame window in a film camera or projector. Again, not something I would use all the time, but I quite like adding a subtle amount to like establishing shots, for example. Kind of adds a little bit of energy and dynamism to what would otherwise be a still shot. Now, I'm conscious this video is getting a little bit too long, so we'll just quickly skim through these last few. You've got Overscan, which lets you show the fill frame and part of the film perforations. Vignette, which is pretty self-explanatory. There's also a handy monitor that shows you false colors and clipping indication, and also a LUT generator so you can export your final look. And then of course, there's a whole ton of sliders to help you fine-tune things like contrast, color boost, and exposure. So you could in theory do all your corrections all within Dehancer's plugin. Now, my only real gripe with the plugin is that you will need a very beefy PC or Mac to run it well, particularly if you have a lot of effects going on. So with all that being said, who is this really for? Now, I would say this is an awesome tool for filmmakers and video editors who produce videos with very quick turnarounds, who can edit in Resolve and are competent in color correction, but not like professional colorists. Now, that being said, if you are a professional colorist or an editor with like really in-depth knowledge of Resolve, this is where things get a little bit more complex, and this is where we have to talk about that price tag again. Now, $450 US at the time of filming this is more than the actual studio version of DaVinci Resolve, which I think is about 300. So the fact is, you can recreate a lot of these effects in Resolve already. You can recreate a lot of the film presets and grain without needing a Dehancer. It's just gonna take you a lot of time to do it, but it can be done. So there will be some users who absolutely won't need something like this, but for others, like myself, this is just a really creative and convenient way to recreate film looks. Personally, I think it would be great to see the Pro version price about $50 to $100 less, and that way I could give it a wholehearted recommendation. But for now, it's more of an, it's awesome, it's definitely worth it. For certain people, it provides great results, but it's not gonna be worth it for everyone. I personally have absolutely loved using Dehancer. I love the creative options it's given me, and I can absolutely see myself using this on a lot of projects that I have coming up. And I think if you're watching this and you're just kind of on the fence, just give the free trial a go and see for yourself. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. A huge thank you to Dehancer once again for making this video possible. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, and leave any comments down there if you have any questions or anything like that. We'll see you on the next video. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.